The big print by the U.S. Central Bank needs to start now, or really, it should have started a long time ago. Scott Bessent, the U.S. Treasury Secretary, is now quietly saying out loud what was previously unthinkable. We're seeing highly charged developments right now at the U.S. Central Bank, the Federal Reserve, just before the next Fed interest rate decision. Here, the Bitcoin price is also showing a slightly positive trend. We're now seeing the expected rebound. Also, the SEC is making some very, very strong statements. We have whales who are now going massively long. On the other hand, we also have bears projecting a Bitcoin price of $70,000 US, either this year or, at the latest, next year. So, there are still some critical analysts, and we have central banks that are freezing massive accounts, simply censoring million-dollar accounts. France, which is on the verge of collapsing, has been downgraded again, this time by Fitch, and much more. We're going to take a look at all of this. First, go ahead and hit the like button. I'd really appreciate it if you could take just a second to do that. It's really not a big extra effort for you. This is all completely free content, but it would really help Bitcoin, this content, and of course the price a lot. As a little thank you, I'll show you my nuts, but only at the end of the video. Yeah, like I said, here the Bitcoin price is showing a slight positive movement. We can also see here that Bitwise really sums it up very well. In the last 5 trading days, inflows into Bitcoin ETFs have exceeded the new supply by about 8.93 times. Probably nothing major here. If we zoom in here, we can see it very clearly. There are more and more institutional inquiries, clearly, as Bitcoin comes into circulation for mining, and this isn't a new trend. We've been seeing this for weeks now, and it's just simple math. When demand is higher than supply, what happens then? Obviously, in the long run, the price has to go up. But right now, we still have sellers in the market. I was asked again yesterday by people, yeah, so why isn't the Bitcoin price going up yet? It's pretty obvious, because we still have a seller's market, and that's just how it is. Even if more Bitcoin is being bought by institutions than is being mined, there are still maybe some other OGs who have been holding Bitcoin for a long time and are still selling. And that's why the price is still struggling here. And yeah, but I'm pretty sure we'll see new all-time highs this year. Here we can also see whales who have just opened a 20 million long position. What do they know that we don't? You only take on positions like that if you're really, really bullish, or if you have insider information or something like that, then you go in with such massive leverage. And now we're coming to the Federal Reserve in just a few. Well, on Wednesday, the interest rate cut is happening, which a lot of people are speculating about. Oh, what's going to happen? Feel free to share your thoughts with me. Do you think it's going to be a nothing burger, or are we really about to light the Valhalla candle here? Bank of America now expects an interest rate cut by the Fed after there were no rate moves earlier this year. So, Bank of America is expecting that, but you really don't have to be a prophet to say that on Wednesday, it's extremely likely that rates will be cut by 25 basis points. I mean, that's pretty much a done deal, unless something really, really crazy happens. But it's actually more likely that we'll see a 50 basis point rate cut than no rate cut at all. And I'd say, let's listen in now. Here's Scott Bessent, who makes an unthinkable statement about the Federal Reserve. Here again, Donald Trump doubles down in his fight against the Federal Reserve and calls for the big print to begin, which would send Bitcoin, the stock markets, and so on, skyrocketing.
If in fact these numbers are true, it shows that President Trump was right about the Federal Reserve. They are too late. And because of the bad numbers, they likely would have been cutting in June. And if we believe the numbers.
So Donald Trump was right here. They should have lowered interest rates at the Federal Reserve a long time ago. We all know that the numbers are manipulated, including all the revisions and so on, which ended up showing even worse employment figures. And if people had known all that, and, let's say, the culprits have been found in the Biden administration who manipulated the numbers in a positive way. Now it turns out the numbers weren't actually that positive. If people had known all that, they would have had to lower interest rates here a long time ago. But that's always the thing. The Fed is always too late. That's why Donald Trump says, too late, Jerome. So basically, Jerome Powell is always too late. And now Scott Bessent is also saying, yeah, at the very latest, now is the time to lower interest rates.
And 4, I can tell you the one thing this administration is not going to do, and we are not going to let the Democrat media surrogates do, is during President Biden, President Harris's campaign, they told the American people, it's a vibe session. You don't understand how good you have it. President Trump was elected for change, and we are going to push through with the economic policies that are going to set the economy right. I believe by the fourth quarter, we're going to see a substantial acceleration.
So, do you know what he just said here? In, let's say, plain German? He said, we will do everything we possibly can to flood the market with money, and, accordingly, take over the Federal Reserve. And LT, break time equals 0.5s/and GT. Of course, he put it a bit more diplomatically, saying that the economic direction will definitely be pushed through, and that what Donald Trump has planned, including the interest rate cuts, will just be forced through, without him actually saying it directly. But that's definitely how I interpret it. That means anyone who's currently in the bear camp could end up being a bit surprised, like this bear here, for example. I mean, you really have to wrap your head around that. There are actually people right now who seriously think that the Bitcoin price is going to drop to 70,000 US dollars.
So I do think, I can't tell you where it's going to be in 10, 15 years from now, but after a correction that I do think we are close to, and I will go on record and say I do think Bitcoin's going back to at least $75,000 a coin, probably by early 2026.
So if, in fact, God forbid, he turns out to be right, then I really, really have a hard time with this statement from Gareth Soloway, who keeps predicting here that Bitcoin will crash, that Bitcoin will fall to 50,000, to 40, to 30,000, and so on. He has predicted crashes so many times, and often those turned out to be good buying opportunities. If you had always listened to him and shorted here, you would have gotten massively wrecked. But yeah, if you didn't listen to him here, then you really profited big time. And now we have to take a look. France, things are really kicking off here, and it's actually highly relevant right now. Rating agency Fitch downgrades France's outlook. Tons of debt and a broken government. The rating agency Fitch has downgraded France's credit rating. This means it will likely become significantly more expensive for our neighboring country to raise money on the capital markets. So that's the big problem here. All these countries around the world are in the process of being downgraded more and more. We've already seen a downgrade in the US as well. That was already, I'd say, an embarrassment for the US. They no longer have the best rating either. Now France and other countries are also at risk of being downgraded. This means we have rising national debt. It's becoming increasingly difficult to keep national debt under control in relation to GDP. And now the rating agencies are coming in and basically downgrading these countries. This means that when they want to issue bonds on the market, they get worse financing terms. In other words, borrowing costs keep rising. So, we're seeing a reflexive negative loop here. That means if interest costs keep going up, it becomes even harder to finance themselves. So, on top of the already high government spending, even more expenses are added, which of course leads to even less confidence in the country, brings in even fewer investors, and that doesn't improve the ratings. Instead, it pushes interest rates even higher. So, financing costs go up even more, making the whole process even harder, and then it can happen that the next downgrade comes because investors pull out, even more trust is lost. And that's basically a downward spiral, a reflexive one, where one thing leads to another. It's kind of like, when things are going well, they just keep going well. Just like in soccer, when everything's working, even if you shoot from the corner flag, bam, it goes right into the goal. It's the same with the Bitcoin price, too. When it goes up, when the Bitcoin price rises, even more investors jump in. It's easier for treasury companies and so on to raise capital. The price keeps going up, then the media jumps in, and it's all hype, hype, hype. And it's the same with the downward spiral, not just with Bitcoin, but also here in the government bond market. And that's really the final boss. If something breaks in the government bond market, that's a huge problem, because then things like government defaults and the like aren't far off. And then there are ideas like Eurobonds and more. I've actually got another video planned where we'll dive deeper into Eurobonds. It's really wild what's happening right now, and of course, it's bullish for Bitcoin. Yesterday, I was at the central bank here at the ECB. Let me show you the picture. I was there, right at the Bitcoin marketing headquarters. Of course, you can always see things in a negative light when it comes to the ECB, but honestly, you could also see it in a really, really positive way. Basically, the ECB is responsible for the fact that I don't need any marketing for my YouTube channel, because the ECB takes care of all of it for me. Same goes for any Bitcoin exchanges. They basically don't need any marketing either, because all of that is handled by the authorities. Not just the ECB, but also the Fed and so on, since they're the ones creating inflation worldwide. After all, inflation is always something man-made. And so, as a Bitcoin holder, you can just sit back and watch the whole thing pretty relaxed, maybe even have a little fun with it, because we all know, or at least we all should know, one thing. One of the biggest threats to Bitcoin, something that wouldn't destroy it but would seriously slow down its adoption, is actually a solid central bank policy. If they were to go back to the gold standard or something like that, or if they started to implement even a halfway solid interest rate and monetary policy, there would simply be much less demand for Bitcoin. And that's why we're now seeing the next central bank totally losing it. Bank runs are threatening or are actually happening right now in Thailand. It's really crazy, a banking crisis in Thailand. As part of a large-scale crackdown on fraudulent mule accounts, the central bank has frozen over 3 million personal and small business accounts. Countless innocent people have been caught up in the investigation, which has led to legal outrage, panicked withdrawals, and retailers refusing transfers in favor of cash. Trust in the banking system is fading, as police are using spyware in banks. Accounts suspected of being linked to fraudulent activities are automatically flagged and frozen. People all over the country are now rushing to pull their money out of the system, and this just goes to show, the money from the central bank, the money in your bank account, and so on, none of it is really your money. Even if something like a digital euro or CBDC is introduced, that's obviously not your money either. Bitcoin and self-custody is the solution here. That's why I'm putting a link below to a TREZOR hardware wallet. In my opinion, it's one of the best hardware wallets on the market. It's open source, has a secure element, and so on and so forth. If you manage your Bitcoin there, then you truly have censorship-resistant money that actually belongs to you, where you can honestly say, yeah, no one can take this away from me unless I share my seed somehow. I don't know, put it on the internet or something. Of course, you should never put your recovery phrase on the internet. That's why I'll put a link for you down below, code Bitcoin Hotel, and you'll also get a discount. I mean, with the central bank stuff, you might want to be a bit careful, because we've often seen that the reports coming out of Thailand weren't always accurate. I'm not from Thailand myself, but I know that sometimes the news there was distorted. There have already been rumors before that CBDCs were being introduced in Thailand, but then it turned out not to be the case. So if any of you are from Thailand, feel free to write in the comments below and give a live report on what the situation is like right now. Then we also have SEC Chair Paul Atkins, who says that they want to issue warnings whenever there is aggressive enforcement action being taken against companies. And this most likely has something to do with Bitcoin, crypto companies, or something like that. I think they want to issue warnings first before taking massive action against them. I think this is also another safety measure to provide more regulatory certainty in the US. And as I promised you, as a big thank you for liking the video, I'm now going to show you my nuts. By the way, that's the only thing I would even touch in the minibar, but honestly, I probably wouldn't even touch the peanuts, because like I've said before, I don't eat anything that comes out of a bag. And of course, they're loaded with salt, and if you look at the back here, you'll definitely find palm oil or something like that listed somewhere. Of course, this is just cheap oil, which you really shouldn't be using either. I just noticed, it doesn't actually have palm oil, but it does have sunflower oil and, yeah, it's probably highly processed too. So yeah, it's best not to touch the minibar at all in hotels. Except for water, of course, you can take that. Of course, you can also take whatever you want. No financial advice or anything like that. Do whatever you think is right. Go ahead and chow down on those bratwursts. See you around. Catch you later. Peace out.